Sorry, they Daf is not memvav, and but the other share is up to the Gemara. So let's quickly go through the Gemara from Hey Amid Beis on the bottom of the page. So basically, quickly we'll go through the Mishnah had an argument. The Torah says that if somebody is a mekalel, if somebody cursed Rahman Hashem, they get stoned and they get hanged. And this hanging, is it only limited to cursing? So we had the Mishnah argument. We had the Chachamim that says it's limited to only two cases that after they get their punishment, we hang them. And that is when it comes to a mekalel, a cursor, and also when it comes to somebody who worships Avodah Zarah. The other opinion says that no. Rabbi Eliezer holds that any avera you did, if the punishment is skila, you will be hanged. And the question will be, so what's the crux of their argument? And the Gemara is going to explain that they're arguing in the methodology of how you glean things from the Torah. There's two, we have a general rule that if you have a generic term, an inclusive term, and then you have a very limiting term, that's called, either is called a klal, which is a generic term, an all-encompassing term, and then a prat, or we refer to it by ribui, inclusive, and miyut, exclusive, or limiting. And just to explain, there's two ways of learning the Torah. One goes as follows. One methodology is klal, prat, klal. The Torah has a general rule, an all-inclusive term. And then following that, there's a prat. It's very specific. Very specific. We had this also in Perik Meruba in Baba Kama, in many places. Very specific. So the way our understanding is, if you use the method of klal or prat, is the prat is coming to explain what the klal is. Even though we use a klal, we actually only mean the prat. We only mean this limited case, or no other case. If it's followed by then another term, which is a klal, which is again all-encompassing, we'll say, okay, we're only going to include those items which are similar to the prat. So klal prat, as we rule, is ein b'chlal ela mashu prat. It's only limited to the prat. If you have another klal afterwards, we expand. How far do we broaden it? Only that which is similar to the prat. That's if you use that methodology. But there's another methodology, same words, but they use the framework of ribui, miyut, and ribui. It goes as follows. There's a word that's a ribui, all-inclusive. And then there is a miyut, very specific, very limiting. That miyut then goes ahead, and it doesn't say that the klal is the miyut. The miyut comes and says, let's limit the ribui. Let's limit it. It's too much. It's too expansive. Let's limit the ribui to what? To something which is very similar to the miyut. In other words, a ribui and a miyut is tantamount to a klal, prat, klal. Same outcome. That is what? That we include things which are similar to the miyut. If you then have a ribui afterwards, we're trying to expand once again. How far do we take it? Anything which is even slightly similar to the ribui, to the miyut, is good enough, as long as it's not dissimilar. Okay? Using these two methods, is that's going to explain the argument in Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim. How far do we take this idea? You have to hang somebody after stoning. So the Gemara explains. It says in Pasuk, "V'hu mas v'tolisa." It says in Pasuk that if the person committed a sin, that it requires to be stoned, he should be put to death, and then you'll hang him on the tree. Yochel, I would have thought, so anybody who's punished by any method from Bezin, killed by any method of Bezin, they should be hanged. It says in the next pasuk, kilas elikim. We shouldn't let him hang on the tree too long. You have to bury him because kilas elikim toli, because the curse of Hashem is on them. Ma mekawel zeh shebeskila. So what do we know about this person who cursed? So that is skila. Av kol shebeskila. Any person who committed any sin, for example, one person, if you whether you worship Avodah Zarah, whether you machal Shabbos, both of them incur skila, and therefore in both of them you get hanged. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, the Chachamim say no. You know what? We're going to compare to Mekal. Ma Mekal is Shekafa because he's a denier in the existence of Hashem. I've called Shekafa because anyone who denies the existence of Hashem. In other words, it's limited only to the cursor, to the Mekadav, Mekal, and to somebody who worships Avodah Zarah, and that's it. But Mike Kaminsky, what's going on here? What's the argument? Rabbanan used the methodology of Dorshi Kloli Prati, and Rabbi Lezer Dorish Ribu Yemir. Different methodology. Rabbanan Dorshi Kloli Prati, we explain. Buhumas v'tolisa the klal. You should put him to death, and they should be hanged. Who's they? Everybody who gets punished by the bezin. So that's called a klal. Kikila, and you have two words here of klal. You have a humas, if you put to death anyone, and v'tolisa, they all should be hanged. Two all-encompassing words. But then it says kikilas. The reason is why you can't leave on the tree is because he cursed. In other words, this is very limiting to cursing, which is a prat. Now, here you have the two klalim written next to each other, and the following pasuk it says kikilas. So we say as follows: had they been next to each other, I mean, would say prat. I would say, well, this is the rule of a klal and a prat, that ein bechlal ela masher prat. The only thing that counts is the word the prat. In other words, only mekalel and nobody else gets hanged. Hani in midachin loy. Only the mekalel, nobody else. And now that it's two different psukim altogether, so then ahani, it helps l'rebuye avodas gechabim. In other words, it's as if one of the ribuys is put forward. It's as if the miyut is sandwiched in between two ribuys, and we're going to read it as if it says, between two klalim, as if it's klal prat uklal. And what is the rule by klal prat uklal? We expand anything which is very similar to the prat. It has to be very similar. In other words, just like you're a mekal, somebody worships avodah zarah. That far away from each other, it comes to include avodas kachavim. The only thing we include is avodah zarah, the domele b'chomel, because it's very similar. However, Rabbi Lezer says my methodology is different. He says ribui umiyut, so he'll say the same thing. V'humas v'talisa, they're both ribui, expansive. Ki kilas is a miyut, very limiting. Now, having mikra ladodi had they been next to each other, then it would be a ribui miyut. And how does a ribui miyut work? That the miyut is not coming to say that this is the ribui is the miyut. Miyut is saying let's limit the ribui to a certain extent, and therefore loy havim mabinan el avodah chavim. We've only included avodah zarah. The domale b'chol milah, because avodah zarah is similar in every respect. But hashta now the mirchikim mahadadi. Now that it's written in a different pasuk, we're going to treat it as if it's a ribui, miyut, and ribui, and therefore. We will be much more expansive, and will include anything which is similar, anyone else who committed a sin that the punishment is skila, will be receiving the same treatment. They have to be hanged after, which we'll discuss in more detail soon. Then Gemara says, "Haish, a person toiling." We, according to the Chachamim, we only hang up. The ones that get hanged are a man, and not a woman. And Rabbi Lezer says, no, a woman as well. But men face the crowd and the women doesn't. My time with the Rabbanon. Why Rabbanon say a man and not a woman? Amakra, because it says in the Pasuk, B'tolisa oisoi. It says in the Pasuk, you should hang him, masculine. Oisoi, only a man and not a woman. Rabbi Lezer, he says, oisoi, we already learned before, oisoi is going to teach you the person itself, but like sushi, without their clothes. Without any clothes. It's not out to tell you masculine, a man and a male, not a female. It's out to tell you the person itself with no clothes. Even though we already stripped the person when it came to the, let's say, stoning, throwing them off the second story, but or the third story. But we would have thought that maybe after they died, we dressed them up again and then we hang them. So as you know, that even though they're dead now, we take them the way they are and hang them on the tree. Rabbanon, in hachinami, you are right. Rabbanon, you're right. And in hachinami, el omakra. So where do they learn it from? It says it says in the person, it says the person committed a sin, then they get killed and they get hanged on the tree. It says ish, a man. Ish isha, only a man, not a woman. Rabbi Lezer. Since he says that they both get hanged, what does he do? The pasuk ish my daughter. What is he dashing? Omar Reishloki says, you know what he dashing with it? Ahul ben Serimur. A ben Serimur has to be 13 years old, but only 13 and 3 months and no older than that, because he was a very young adolescent. But so in other words, the Torah is saying only an ish who gets skila, an adult, will be hanged. But a ben soiremura, even though they receive skilla, they will not be hanged. Says the Gemara, okay, then how can it be? You're telling me that a ben soiremura, even though they get skilla, they get hanged, but it's not true, because what Tanya learned in the Brisa, that a ben soiremura niskel v'nitla. Divrei Rabbi Eliezer, the very same Rabbi Eliezer holds that every person who commits every sin that you commit, that you get skilla, you will be hanged, including a ben soiremura. So what does he do with the pasuk ish? What's he coming to exclude? We have a very interesting phenomenon in the Gemara, and that is that if something comes to exclude something, it is a double exclusion. It's actually like a double negative, it becomes a positive. A double exclusion actually comes to include. And in this pasuk, we have two exclusions for ben soiremura. It says ish, a man, so an adult, not a ben soiremura, it's just merely 13. And then it says hate, committed a sin. Now, the ben soiremura did not commit a sin yet that they deserve to die. Stole from his parents' pocketbook, their mother's pocketbook, or whatever. Doesn't have handbag, doesn't deserve to die. But we already can see from his comportment where he's going. So the Torah says we're going to kill him now because of how they get behaving later. So the Torah says who gets hanged? Only chait, if they already committed a sin that deserves to be hanged. Comes to exclude the ben soiremura. We have two exclusions now for ben soiremura. A double negative becomes a positive. Says the Gemara. Elam nach Yisrael, Rabbi's ben soiremura comes to include. My time, what's the reason? The Omakro says the pasuk ish. If a person commits, if a person commits a sin, ish v'loy ben, an adult and not a child, and chait, a sin, misha al chetin nedik, they were killed because of the sin they committed today. Yotze ben soiremura al shum soifer. He gets killed because of the future, so therefore he's not included. Having miyut achamiyut. You have a double exclusion. It comes to include. Rabbi said, Rabbi's argument was, from the story we discussed yesterday, Shimon ben Shetach killed 80 witches, and how did he kill them? He had them hanged. He lifted them up from the ground. So we see clearly that women get hanged as well. So the Rabbanan answers back, no, he did not. He worked outside of the framework of a normal bezin, and I will prove it to you. A normal bezin does not try two people the same day. Two cases the same day, and they tried all 80 the same day. So it was a special, exceptional case, and you can't bring any proof from it. Says the when do we say that el b'shtei misas? When do we say that a bezin cannot try two cases the same day if it's two separate cases altogether, two separate forms of punishment? So therefore, they want them to focus. You can't have them both on the same day. But if it's the same case, if it's the same kind of punishment, they can focus on two cases the same day. So the Gemara, what are you talking about? The whole proof was from Shimon ben Shetach, but all the witches received the same punishment. They all received skilla. So you could have, within the framework of a bezin, judge all 80 cases, try all 80 cases on the same day. So what does Rabbi Eliezer prove from there? So what did Rabbi Eliezer answer back? So we see clearly that women get hanged, and they followed the rules of a bezin. But Ma'aseh the Shimon Shetach the Misa Achas it was one form of punishment. They said they ain't done in, and yet the Chachamim said that this is not the normal way for a bezin to behave. This is what the rule is. We're talking about if, let's say, he committed two averis, even though the same punishment, if the averis are not exactly the same, then you shouldn't try two cases, two separate averis the same day. For example, Shabbos you get skilla, and Avodah Zarah you get skilla. And we don't want, even though they're both the same punishment, we don't want you to try them both on the same day. And when it came to the witches, even though they were all witches, each one had a different kind of witchcraft. There's oiv, there's yidoni, there's different kinds of witchcrafts, and therefore, even though the punishment is the same, they were different averis, and yet the bezin tried them all on the same day. They worked outside the normal framework of a bezin. So the fact that they hanged all 80 women doesn't prove, in a general case, we hang women. Mostly Rabbi Barabba asked a general question on what you just said. It says clearly you said that if it's the same sin, not only if it's the same sin and the same punishment, they can be tried the same day. It says in the Brisa, "Ain't done you don't try the same day. Philip ben Noivan even a woman and a man who committed adultery, you don't try them both the same day. Now it's the same activity, same avera, same punishment, and it says clearly you don't try them the same day. Says the Gemara, the din is that a bas kohen punishment is very different than everybody else because she's bringing disrepute to her family line. A bas kohen, if she commits adultery, her punishment is sreifa, burning. If a bas Yisrael commits adultery and she's married, you only get chenek. But the male, the man who had an affair with her, he only gets chenek. So the Gemara is going to say that here you have one avera, right? They both commit adultery, but it's two different punishments because she gets sreifa and he gets chenek, and therefore you shouldn't try them both on the same day. Says the Gemara, Targum of Chizda, the Bas Koyin Uboilo, talking about a Bas Koyin and the man who had an affair with her, two different punishments altogether. Or the Bas Koyin v'zoyme sodel, or a Bas Koyin and the zoyme of zomer. Goes as follows. You have group A that comes in and they testify that this married woman and this guy were having an affair. So what would happen? The Bezin ruled she deserves to have sreifa and the man has to get chenek. Comes in group B and says to group A, how can you testify what you said when you weren't even around? You were with us somewhere else altogether. So at this stage, what happens? She's found innocent, he's found innocent, and group A now will get punished. Which punishment they'll be killed, but which punishment will they receive? They won't receive the punishment they try to give to her, which is sreifa. They'll get the punishment they try to give to him, which is chenek. Because the Torah says, you should do to the Eidim what they intend to do to their brother. So we darshan the brother and not to the sister. So then comes group C. And group C says, group B, what are you talking about? You weren't even around there. You were with us in the third place altogether. So what happens then? So group A now is reinstated. They're innocent. Group B is the one's going to get punished. The woman now is going to get killed straight and the man is going to get chenek. And group B are going to get what they wanted to do to group A. They're going to get chenek because they try to kill group A with chenek. And the woman is going to get sreifa. The same idea. It's one avera and yet two different punishments. That's the Gemara. That's how we reconcile this brisa. I heard that sometimes Bezin will meet out punishments that are not in accordance with the Torah. Not because they want to, breach what the Torah says. They're trying to support the Torah that people should behave. The person riding a horse on Shabbos. Now, for riding a horse on Shabbos, it's an avera midrabanan. You might pull up branches. It's not an avera in the Torah. And yet, in the times of the Greeks, but because the Greeks were basically making it very difficult to keep mitzvahs. There were many Yidden who were using the Greeks as a pretext why they can't do any mitzvahs. It's too difficult, whatever it is. So the Chacham felt they have to strengthen the Torah again. They brought this person who was riding a horse on Shabbos, uskaluhu, and they stoned him. Because that's the right punishment. It was necessary at the time. There's a story of the person he was having an intimate relationship with his wife or with a woman under a tree, or his wife under a tree, a fig tree. And they brought him, gave him malchus. There's also sin. People were so promiscuous they decided to have to do something about it. And we find, especially when it came to an informer, over the years, they always, where the Chachamim was strong, they would put the informer away, kill the informer, Rimagash. The Rebbe of the Rambam writes that they killed an informer on Yom Kippur during Nila, while everybody was davening, shul was crowded, so nobody noticed. And so Bezdin sometimes would take law in their own hands, but as a Bezdin. Next mission. Okay, now that we decided that we are going to hang him, exactly how does that work? So Ketzad, what do we do? Toilin, how do we hang him? Mishakin es hakoida. They take a beam, place in the ground. They take a tree, a beam, and they place it in the ground, and they wedge it into the ground. And and then what happens is there's a beam that sticks out from the tree like a gallows. They tie his hands. Now remember, the guy's already dead. They tie this person's two hands together on top of each other. But so they hang him that way. Rabbi Yosi says, I don't believe you wedge it into the ground. That the beam, this beam, is actually leaning against the wall. It's above the ground, leaning against the wall. And then they would hang him his hands from the beam, just like they would hang up their their animals, like the butchers. Interesting. As soon as they hanged him, as the Gemara will say, one person was tying the knot, and the other person was untying it. If you leave it there overnight, it says, you're not allowed to leave it on the tree. It's mandatory to bury him. Because the curse of Hashem is on this person. What does that mean? Why are we hanging this person? Because he was a blasphemer. Every time a person walks by and says, "Oh, why is this guy hanging?" and somebody will have to repeat, "Oh, because he's a blasphemer." That is bringing a disrepute to Hashem. But that's a chil Hashem, and therefore Hashem said, "I don't want to hang you on the tree." When a person is in pain because he's being punished for averis that he did, is Shechina Maloshem. What's Hashem? What's the comment that Hashem makes at the time? Kalni meroishi, kalni mezrei. Oy, my head weighs so much, my arms weigh so much. No, but Hashem felt bad that he had to punish these sinners. Hashem is upset about Rishayim, the blood of Hashem that had to be spilled. Imagine the blood of righteous people. That Hashem, how upset Hashem is when Chasrom they get killed. But not only that, they say not only somebody who didn't what do you call it? These people who Bezin killed, but anybody who died should be buried straight away. If you leave the mace, you're over an avera. And big machlek is Rishonim. If this is anywhere in the world, everybody should be buried straight away, or this is only in Eretz or only in Yerushalayim. If you're ever in Yerushalayim, you see that they make sure they bury everybody before night, the very same day. What happens if the reason why they delayed the funeral is for the benefit, for the honor of the corpse? Let's say bring a proper coffin or tachrim shrouds. Anyway, we're not over. In that case, you're not over. Now, what they do with the corpse of the person who was killed by Bezin, they don't bury him alongside his parents, not at all. What they did was they had elishtei bate kibros hayim sakal Bezin. Like in some cemeteries today, they would have a separate section for people who commit suicide, separate section for people on Mechal Shabbos. They would have a separate section for the people who were killed by Bezin. They had two separate sections. Achas and Nerogin. One was for Nerogin and Nechnogin, for those who were killed, the two lesser forms of punishment. And the Achas Leniskolin and stuff, those were stoned and burnt. Nis Achala Basa, once the flesh decomposed, that's considered a total kapara atonement. Melaktin es atomas, he gathered together the bones, then you bury them in the rightful place. And then the relatives show that they're not upset with the bezin. The relatives come and they ask the Yonim, how are you? They greeted the Yonim, show the Eidim, they greet the Eidim. In other words, we have no complaints to you whatsoever. What you did was right, according to the Torah. Part of the kapara atonement, this is Harashila, it's the Ramaz. Part of the atonement for the mace is that they would not eulogize, they would not make an avelas, there was nobody there who'd mourn the mace. And that's very embarrassing and humiliating. That's all part of the kapara, because it's the public display of how people, have no time for this person. But you're allowed to feel you're allowed to feel bad in your heart. Anyone lives only in personally heart. Nobody therefore is aware of it, and therefore it doesn't appear to be bad. What Torah we learned? If the order of the pasuk would have been a little bit different, it would have said that if a person has a sin, the tolisa, you should hang him, not v'humas with tolisa, just tolisa. I would say tolisa, you hang them, you kill them. Just like the kingdom. That's why they said v'humas should be killed with tolisa and hang him. Memisin oisay, That's why the pasuk says first you have to make sure you kill the person. And only after he's been killed by the bezin, only then do you hang him. Okay, so what do you do? Now we don't want, if you're going to kill this person in the morning and people say, oh, we have plenty of time before we bury him. What happens when you have plenty of time and you procrastinate? You don't stop procrastinating. So we say over here is mashin oisa. They wait ad somuch l'shkir zechama. They wait until sunset. The bezin waits to close to sunset. The goyim in the dinner. That's when they issue the verdict. Umamisin oisa. The bezin immediately meets our punishment. And the achekach turn oisa, and they hang him straight away before night. And echad koishe echad matin. One person tied, while the other person at the same time is untying the person. The kind mitzvah is a mitzvah to hang, so you hang, but you don't want it to be too long, as we'll soon explain why not. Tell me what we learned. Eight, it says in the pasuk that you shouldn't leave him hanging on the eighth, because cover you have to bury it. So we're going to darshan that the tree that he's hanged on, or the post that he's hanged on, gets buried with him. Is eight Shemei. All I know is bein bit tolush, bein mechuber. I don't care if it's still attached to the ground as a tree, or whether it's attached to the ground, or whether it's been detached. Therefore, it says It says in the pasuk, "Ki cover tikpareno," because you have to bury it. You have to bury it. Only if you're missing kavura, this is only talking about if it's missing only, the Torah says, I want it to be as soon as he gets off the post, I want it to be buried, including the post. But if it's attached to the ground, then Yotzezeh's exception, you have to remove, detach it from the ground, and you have to bury it. There's another step. And therefore, the Rabbanan say, you have to be detached, but you can wedge it in the ground. Then you just yank it out. Rabbi Yosi says, Misha eina mechusa ela kavura. I agree with you that the only thing should be missing is all you have to do is take it and bury it. Yotzezeh, but if it's wedged in the ground, there's an extra step. Shemechusa talisha, you have to yank it out, the kavura, and bury it. Rabbanan, klusha lav kulma. The Rabbanan say that klisha is lav kulmi, is nothing. I mean, they say it's not really an activity. It's not like detaching something which is attached to the ground. Just got to give it one yank and it's out of the ground. Second, for a time we learned, I'll explain to you why you have to sort of take him off the tree straight away. Is comparative to two brothers, twins, in one city. One of them was appointed to be a king. At least one of them went out and became a robber. Siva Hamelech Lu, and the king then therefore, he was caught, whatever, he was mourned and everything else, and eventually the punishment was they had to be hanged. Anybody saw, because he was an identical twin to the king, people would say, Oi, Hamelech Toli, the king is hanging, suspended there above the ground. Siva Hamelech Toli, they took him off. Same thing here. Every person, as Rashi explained, every person is Betzelon Nivra Lakim, every person is similar to Hashem, and therefore it's embarrassing for Hashem that the Yid is hanging. So you take him right off. My mashma, how do we see that? Says kal less. It's like we say kal, the word killas is as if it's kal less. I am not lying. Hashem said, oh, I have a heavy head, I have a heavy arm, because it says killas alakim. Killas is made up of two words. Kal less. It is not easy, it is not light. Rav says, why is negative? In Cain, covered a should have said, Hashem should have said, oh, my head is heavy. Instead of saying my head is not light, which is a double negative, just say my head is heavy or my arms are heavy. But that's what he should have said. He's saying it's light, but not that I'm light. The world is light, which is a euphemism for saying, but for me, it's heavy. But the word kilas, we need legufe. We need the word kilas to teach you the din we said before, whether it's only limited to avodah zara, or whether it also includes anyone who gets kilas should be hanged. We needed to teach you that halacha. It's no longer extra to say what Hashem's comment is. Imke name a crow, just say mekala, my kilalas, as if it says kal less. It's not like maybe it's only for that. How the kilas is also there to teach you. We said before it's a ribui or a klal. Who said we can use the word for that? Imke name a crow kilas. My kilas adamad lamed shmama tati, two things. Not only in the case of somebody who was killed by bezin, but every person who dies needs to be buried. How you know that if you don't bury somebody over, let's say you have an avera, Tamalema says, Ki kavar tik berenu, bury you should bury. Mikan lemolin as mace, if somebody buries, if you delay the burial of some of a deceased, over belay over an avera. The obvious question everybody asks is, the pasuk says cover tik berenu, which is a positive mitzvah, and you're telling me that I'm over a negative. So the pshat is that once we know that you have to bury the person, we go back to the beginning of the pasuk where it says loy solin, don't leave. Now there's two parts of the pasuk. There's loy solin and kikover. The Yereim says at Aruch Laner that that cover tikbarenu starts as soon as it gets dark. You have a mitzvah to bury. Loy solin is don't leave it overnight. You're not over that aved until early dawn. And we have that same thing that you're not allowed to delay paying your worker. We had in Bamatzia, lesolin schar sacher, the same word lesolin. And there we say that you're not over the avera until the morning. So lesolin you have all night. Another version of them is Likvura. I know there's a hint to Kvura. Tamalema ki cover tikvarenu. You should bury Mekan Remez Likvura min hatayra. Big argument that Shainim there's a mitzvah mahatayra to bury, or with the Rabbanan. Most say there's a mitzvah mahatayra. But interesting, Rabbeinu Chananel, in the very end of this page, the last word, in the next page, he says, the Kaimalan, we have a rule that it's only midrabanan to bury somebody. So the Kaimalan, this is the rule. But in the Rishonim is machlek. Says the Gemara further. Sorry. Amalei Shabbat Malki Rav Chama. We learned Shabbat Malki came across him. He's a guy who was very interested in learning. He once asked Rav Chama, Kavura mahatoyde menai. How do you know that you have to bury someone? Ishtikula Amalei Midi. Rav Chama didn't respond. Amar Rav Achba Yaakov was pretty sharp, and he said, Imsid Alma biyada the tray. It seems that the leaders in this generation are all foolish. The boy he should have said, Kikover. The puzzle says you have to bury. Why was he silent? Says the Gemara, no, you know why you didn't answer that? Because what he would have said, Sharaf would have said, the law of the order, maybe all it means is you have to put him in a casket. Who said you have to put it under the ground? And he wants to know, where's the mitzvah that you have to put under the ground? Now, you know that there's a big, it says that the big machlek is whether you should bury the body directly on the ground or whether you can put it in the casket. Like, you in Yerushalayim and other parts, some places they bury, they don't put them in a casket, and other places they do. And even those that do and put in the casket, most places do. They make holes, they bore holes in the bottom of the casket so that it should be in touch with the earth. Because it says the pasuk vel ashfar tashuv, that a person should go back to dust. So the word continues. So tikbarenu. Okay, the word cover means a casket, but that's he covered tikbarenu, which obviously means he buried on the ground. The goyim don't believe in this idea that if a word appears twice, comes to teach a new dinim. So Venema, just tell him, fact, historically, but the ikva tzadika were buried. Obviously, it's a mitzvah. The Gemara says no. Again, he didn't answer because Shlomo Malka was very cool. He would have said, "Min hagabalma." That's a culture, tradition. What does it do with the Torah? So what about? He should have told him in the cover because Moshe Hashem buried Moshe. Again, Shlomo Malka might say the loy lishtan min haga shouldn't deviate from the general tradition. Toshma coming in. Okay, we'll try to bring some proofs that there's a mitzvah to bury. It says that even Shlomo Malka can accept. It says the softu lekol Yisrael. Yeravam was a Rasha. All of his children were Rishonim, but he had one child that was actually a tzaddik. His name was Avia, and he was a tzaddik. And so therefore, Achriya Shaloni is saying that your son in the future, when he will pass away, that he will be because he was a tzaddik. The Safdullah Kol Yisrael, all the Yidden will eulogize him. The Kavru Oisa, they will bury him. So we see close means a mitzvah to bury. Saying, well, that's no proof. The Lord Ishtam and Haga, all he's saying is that he will be treated like everybody, like all good people, and he'll be buried properly, not because it's a mitzvah. Okay, then it says further that Yirmiyah said that the punishment for these people who are such Rishoyim is La Yispudu, nobody will eulogize them, but La Yikfudu, they will not be buried. La Doiman Apnei, they will be dung on the ground. So again, you see clearly, a curse is they won't be buried. Terrible thing. So it means it's a mitzvah to be buried. Says what again? All he's saying is that they won't be buried like everybody else. Doesn't mean it's a mitzvah. Okay, and Gemara therefore says that's why Rab Chama was quiet and didn't answer Shalom Malka because he would have came up with his arguments and there's not enough proof. But for us, we have covered Tikvarenu. That's positive proof. By the way, we have an interesting question. Kavura. Why? What's the logic behind burying somebody? Is it Mishum Bizyana? Is it because it's not dignified to have the corpse lying there, not just for his own sake, but it's not dignified for the family who has to see him? Or Mishum Kaparu? Or is it an atonement? As Rashi explains, you lower the body to the dirt, into the ground, and that in itself is demeaning. Al offer tashuv. That's it. You started from offer, you were alive, and now al offer tashuv. So therefore, that's a kapara. The Mainav Kamina, what's the difference? What the reason behind it is? Big difference. The Amar he said, I don't want to be buried. See, if it's because it's not dignified, it's embarrassing for the living as well. And what right do you have to put yourself in a position that you're going to embarrass your relatives? Like Kokamini, he's not believed. But the Amin Mishum Kaparu, if it's purely a personal thing that it's his atonement, well, he said, I want a kapara. Interesting machlekes and Rishonim. Rashi says clearly here, if he says, I don't want to be buried because I don't want the kapara, Rashi says, even if you do bury him, he will not achieve kapara. And others say that even though he said, I don't want to be buried, if you bury him, he will have a kapara. So which one is it? Tashma, come in here. We'll go through the same points we went through before. First of all, tzadiki. We buried tzaddikim. Now, tzaddik doesn't need a kapara, so why is a tzaddik buried on the ground? Must be to be because it should be dignified and that it shouldn't embarrass your family. The Amrim should kapara if it's atonement tzaddik tzaddik in the kapara. So yes, in the chesiv it says Adam ain't tzaddik there isn't a person that does good, and there's nobody perfect. Everyone needs a kapara. Okay, Toshma, it says by the son of Yeravam, it says over there, V'sofdulai Kol Yisrael, in the future, everybody is going to be masped him but by Aviyah. Everyone is going to eulogize him, the cover Oisel bury him. Now, you can tell me, if you can tell me that the purpose should be a kapara, what's just one place? Is Hanach Namlik, but if the purpose of eulogy and burying is that it should be a kapara, then why don't we bury all the other children of Yeravam as well? So why are they Rishayim? Why shouldn't they have a kapara as well? Says the Gemara, Kehecha the Tevla kapara. Asks the Gemara, hi tzaddik. Lost the place. Is Hanach Nami? Look for this. So the question is, why don't we bury all the other children of Yeravam? Kehecha the Tevla kapara. They should also have a kapara. Answers the Gemara. Hi, the tzaddik who Yeravam's son Aviyah was a tzaddik to have the kapara. He deserves to have a kapara as well. But Hanach, the others who are Rishayim, loy lev a kapara. Why should they have a kapara? Toshma coming here. Loy yispetu v'loy yikperu. It says in pasuk. Loy yispetu v'loy yikperu. Yirmiyah said in the future, these Rishayim, they will not be eulogized. They won't be buried. The loy tev the kapara. Leave Likru. So the chayda, if it's a kapara, then what's wrong if they get buried? If it's bizayin, who cares? But if it's they're all rishayim. But if it's a kapara, let them be buried. And so the Gemara Yirmiyah was asking the like Telugu. He didn't want them to have a kapara. In fact, we had a Gemara Babakam of Yizayin there that Yirmiyah davened to Hashem that if these rishayim, even if they give charity, because they were generous people. Do me a favor, the people who are coming to collect the charity should all be con artists, so they won't have the credit of giving tzedakah. So nor did he want that they should have a kapara. So any other Gemara does not resolve this question. Now, if burying is mahatayra, then we're going to be machmir, we're going to bury him, even though he said, I don't want to be buried. We don't know if it's for kapara and he has the right to say, I don't want to, or maybe it's bezoyan, so we are going to bury him. The Rabbanon, maybe you can be lenient. And if he says, I don't want to be buried, maybe you don't bury him. Another similar question. Hespeda, what's the purpose of a eulogy? Is it Yikara the Chaya to honor the living, the covered with the living? Or is it the covered of the person who died? The Manak may know what's the difference. What happened like Tisbullah? He said, I don't want to be eulogized. If it's for his benefit, he has the right. If it's for the benefit of the living, who is he to say that I don't want a eulogy? Let's say, can we force the heirs from the money they inherited from the father to pay for the funeral? And to pay, they used to pay for the eulogizers. If the point, if the eulogizers were there for their benefit, heirs, then they don't have to pay. They don't want it. But if it's for the benefit of the deceased, then they have to use them. We can force them to use the money of the deceased to pay for it. Toshma, we'll go through. It says here, Yahweh Avram. Avram came from the arcade, at least for the Sada, to eulogize Sada with the place of the cry. Now, they held off the funeral of Sarah so that Avram could come. If you tell me that what? If you tell me that the eulogy is for the benefit of the mace, then it makes sense why you delayed the burial of Sarah to wait for Avram. But if you can tell me that for the benefit of the living Avram, what right did they have to delay Sarah's funeral? Would they delay Sarah? Why? Answer the Gemara, Sarah Gufa, Sarah herself, Nichala. It's an honor to her as well. If Avram gets covered from her, she benefits from it as well. So even though the eulogy is for Avram's benefit, indirectly she gets covered from it as well. She gets benefit from it also. Therefore, they were allowed to delay it. It's for her benefit. It's not a bezoin for her in this case. Says something that they are going to Yeravam's son, that they are going to Avia. They are going to eulogize him and bury him. If you tell me that the only reason why you give eulogies is for the benefit of the living, is Hana b'nei Yekorininu. Why in the world are you? What's the big deal of eulogizing? That these are all Rishayim. Why should you? He's saying, and the good news is that they're going to eulogize him. Who these Rishayim? So what's the big thing here? So the Gemara, no. Even though the benefit of the Rishayim, since the benefit is because of this tzaddik, nichelu tzadikaya, the tzaddikim benefit from it. The miyakriba injury that people feel that they have covered from it, the tzaddik has a covered from it as well, and therefore, even though it's for their benefit, it's all right. And it was Achir Shalini was saying that this is what's going to happen. Toshma coming here. Yirmiyah said, "Lo yispedum, lo, you won't be any eulogies." Now, if it's for the benefit of the living, there must have been some tzaddikim there. So how come, if it's the benefit of the people who died, we don't want them to get eulogized, they're bad. But if the benefit of the living, there were some good people there. So why shouldn't you have any eulogies at all? So we answer, in this case here, the tzaddikim have no pleasure. They have no pleasure when you that the Rishayim have make some kind of covered for the people who are alive, who are tzaddikim, will have no pleasure in the eulogy if it's about Rishayim who are buried in the ground. So therefore, Yirmiyah said there won't be any eulogies. Tashma coming here. They told Tzidkiyahu Hamelech that he will die like his predecessors, Bishalom Thomas, that he will die peacefully, and the same kinds of graves that your father, your ancestors were buried, the same thing will happen to you. We're learning more about Zara that when a king dies, all of his possessions die with him. And there's no, you'll be treated like any other king in your ancestors, even though the Nebuchadnezzar now is in control. And they will also give eulogies for you. Now the question is, and this is supposed to make him happy. If the whole purpose of eulogy is only to benefit those who are living, what's the big news here? They're going to want to eulogize you. So what? So how is that going to make Tzidkiyahu feel any better? Says this is what he said to him. He said to him that the Yidden are going to eulogize you just like just like that that they were eulogized through your ancestors. Okay, we'll stop here. We'll continue tomorrow. Mr. Shem, have a Shavua Tov, a good luck, everybody.